Like this video in the next 5 seconds or this recon expert will show up at your house and haunt you while you're sleeping.
We still haven't seen what the PlayStation 5 looks like, and it's starting to get a little ridiculous now. But according to a leak from tech insider Jeff Rickle, there's a reason why Sony hasn't shown us the design of the console yet. And it's because they don't even know what it looks like themselves. And just to reiterate, this is all a leak, so everything we're going to talk about in this video might not be exactly true. But there's a lot in this leak that makes sense, so we're here to report on it. The reason why Sony hasn't shared the design of the PS5 with the public yet is supposedly because they're dealing with an overheating issue in the console. They're concerned about the form factor of the PS5 and the fact that it's not allowing the console to disperse heat as efficiently as they thought. They're in even more of a predicament because of the Xbox Series X. The form factor of the Xbox Series X is perfect in Sony's eyes, but they can't just outright copy the design of the console. If they do, then everyone would say they can't think for themselves and just copied Microsoft. The thing is, we don't think it would be a bad idea for Sony to copy the design of the Xbox Series X, because that thing looks like a PC tower. PC towers are designed in a way that improves airflow, which is something we see in the Series X. The big top grille of the console will really help cool the Xbox Series X, and the fan takes up the entire diameter, making it probably the biggest fan we've seen in a console. Clearly, they're taking cooling seriously, unlike what they did with the Xbox 360 back in the day. Woof. You remember the red ring of death, right? Yeah, the console was great, but the design was a little rough. The failure rate on the 360 was insane, so clearly Microsoft learned their lesson and are keen on improving things with the Xbox Series X. From what we know about the PS5, we're not surprised that overheating has been an issue so far. Think about it. Overheating will happen more easily in the PS5 because it has less powerful components compared to the Xbox Series X. But they have higher clock speeds. This means that the PS5 works harder than the Xbox Series X in general, which leads to more overheating. It's actually quite simple. In fact, according to Rickle, developers have been frustrated by the fact that the PS5 gets hot quickly and struggles to maintain clock speeds. Since the PS5 isn't consistently at full power, developers are having trouble figuring out what the console is capable of, which can make it difficult for developers to make games for the console. Sony had a similar situation with the PS3, which was known as a very difficult console to develop games for, so they may be repeating a previous mistake. Now, it's true that consoles have always had overheating problems, since they've never been designed like PCs until now. And it's coming to a head this upcoming generation with Sony being bested by Microsoft's Xbox Series X so far, at least in terms of cooling. And speaking of which, on top of not revealing the console, Sony refused to talk about the PS5's cooling system at GDC in mid-March. And that might be because it's the biggest issue facing the console. What this all means is that unless something changes quickly, the PS5 might be in big trouble. If this leak is true, then Sony might have no choice but to delay the launch of the PS5 anywhere between 6 to 12 months so that they could perfect the cooling system and get rid of the overheating issue altogether. Another option is to simply release the console during the 2020 holiday season as scheduled and deal with the fact that it might have a very high failure rate, similar to the Xbox 360. Sony would then release an upgraded version of the PS5 a couple of years later with an improved cooling system, but that doesn't sound like something Sony would do, right? Well, let's take a look at the PS4. The PS4 did have some issues when it was released, as it was very noisy and had a tendency to overheat when playing certain games. Sony didn't really do much to fix these issues, but they released the PS4 Pro a few years later with a much bigger heatsink, which helped with the problem. Sure, the PS4 Pro is noisier than the regular PS4 at times, since it consumes a lot more energy, and it could even get quite hot, but rarely to the point of overheating. Sony typically fixes these kinds of issues with updated consoles, since there's really no other way to go about this kind of problem on their end. They can't recall all the consoles, fix them up, and send them back. Well, we mean they could do that, but it's just not really consumer-friendly since we'd be without our consoles for weeks. The next best thing is to just update the console, which is what they might do with the PS5. Although we hope they don't. Honestly, we'd rather take a year-long delay than a console that's going to break on us before an updated one is even released. We do not need another rehash of the Xbox 360. It is possible that Sony originally had a design, but it didn't work, so they needed to switch it around, and that's the only reason why we haven't seen the PS5 yet. Hopefully, things aren't as bad as this leak makes them seem, and Sony just decides to go the tower route and design the console like a PC, similar to the Xbox Series X. But as much as it pains us to say this, everything seems to line up with this leak. We haven't seen the PS5 yet, and the overheating and form factor issues could definitely be the reason why. We just hope it doesn't get delayed. That would be the worst case scenario for Sony, and might make gamers just itching for some next generation gaming switch over to the Xbox Series X and never look back. We seriously hope that this leak is false, but you never know. And that is everything we know about the PS5 design.
I think I'm falling for you.